Hello and welcome back, everyone, to the Cancel for Maintenance podcast. If this is your first time joining us, we talk about the non-glamorous life of aircraft maintenance. Our goal here is to give some insight to aircraft maintenance, bring some laughs, share some stories, and impart some wisdom, all in which to give you that moment's relief in your day to prevent a mishap. I am your host, Six.
I'm MVP.
And our third host, Shoreline, is silently in the back, twisting knobs, adjusting levels, making sure our audio is good to go and our faces stay fit for radio. Today, we are joined by two guests. Our first guest was a Part 135 pilot, a commercial airline pilot, began flying at the age of 14, which was a long journey in of itself. Owns 2 aircraft for him and his family, and is the founder and president of the STEM and Aviation Youth Indiana, or STAY Indiana, which is a newly founded nonprofit organization whose intent is to give enthusiastic teens the opportunity to build their own airplane and learn how to fly it. Please welcome Mr. Matt Branson.
Thanks.
Mr. Matt, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
And our second guest started his journey in aviation both as a pilot and a mechanic apprentice back in 1968 when he was only 12. He has many highlights in his career, including being the first sophomore in his high school's history to be an auto mechanics program, overhauling an aircraft engine because he was too young to drive at the time, founding King Aero Aviation, restoring 31 aircraft and counting, some of which now sits in the EAA Museum in Oshkosh, and is also a technical advisor and mentor for the STAY Indiana organization. And also, he's the recipient of the Michigan and Northern Indiana's Aviation Maintenance Technician of the Year for 2022. Hey,
Dang.
Please welcome.
Quite a rap sheet you got there.
Right. Please welcome Mr. Marty King. Mr. King.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining. Gentlemen, again, thank you so much for taking the time and coming on to an episode with us. I have to say, both of your backgrounds there, we were reading it through before the episode began. It's just inspiring. Matt, with yours, like, for instance, like having to travel so far just to follow your dream to be a pilot. And then you mentioned that you've had a not so fantastic instructor who pretty much told you all sorts of negativity.
Yeah, he gave me some bad advice, which is kind of where this all kind of stemmed from, is because from my own personal experience. So I grew up in a small rural town of Lone Pine, California. A lot of people have heard of it. It's kind of on the eastern side of the Sierra Nevadas there.
I know where Lone Pine's at. That's about 3.5 to 4 hours north of where I'm at. It's
about 3 to 4 hours away from everything.
Yeah. I'm in the high desert, the Antelope Valley.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, if you just keep going up 14 and join 395 there, you'll run into it.
There. But been through there many times.
So yeah, where I grew up, there wasn't many pilots. There was 2 private pilots in the area at the time. They tried their best to try to inspire me and help me out, but I ended up having to travel up to Bishop, California, which is about a little over an hour drive. That was the closest airport that had a flight instructor, and he was the only professional pilot I knew up until I was about 18. So his advice to me after I got my private pilot's license was that was it, because I wear glasses. So he told me since I had bad eyesight, I would never be able to get a class 1 medical, or class 2 for that matter. So he said I'd never be able to be a professional pilot. So like, okay, I believe the guy because he's the only one I knew. So I went off to college to become an engineer instead. And later on, I found out that I could get a class 1 medical, and I was able to move forward with flying airplanes instead, which that's what I really wanted to do, not do the engineering part. But
especially go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, especially something like engineering, that takes a special kind of mind to just be able to sit there and come up with things. And for the most part, everything sounds cool until you see all the math and the drawings and all of the technical need to know that go with it. Like, wow, this is very overwhelming. We joke about engineers all the time, but when the rubber meets the road and you actually see them in their element and doing what they need to do, like, wow, I cannot follow any of this.
Yeah. That's and I was able to go to Purdue to do the engineering part, and I enjoyed it. We had a lot of fun, just designing some of the planes and stuff. But in the end, I just decided I didn't really want to do the designing part of it or the engineering part of it. I really wanted just to fly the planes themselves. So I always enjoyed that part the best. So I took that path instead. But I think a lot of people don't realize that they think from the pilot standpoint, that you have to go to certain schools and stuff for being a pilot. And I went to school for engineering. I didn't go for school for piloting. So I actually just did all the flight instructor on the side at like an FBO. And so I think a lot of people don't even realize that you can just go to your local FBO and get all your pilot certificates and then, move forward with your pilot career too. So, again, there's a lot of different paths in aviation that you can take. And I think a lot of people think there's only a couple. And so I think it's good to show all those different paths that people can take.
Right, exactly. And I was about to.
Most people think it's just, sorry to cut you off, Six, but most people think it's either maintainer or pilot. And to be honest with you, I think the majority of the populace would say there's one, and that's pilot. Yeah. And then you kind of learn about the maintainer as you're piloting.
And to be honest, I think some people like yourself, or like the mechanic that takes care of my plane, I don't think he ever wanted to fly an airplane. I think he just likes working on planes, like working with his hands. And I think that's some people, that's their thing, and that's great. We need people to fix airplanes and work out with with planes. And some just want to fly them. We all have our thing, some want to design them, some want to build them, some want to fly them. So we're just trying to help find that thing, is what we're trying to do. And so we're trying to cover all the bases with the aviation. So whatever, way you want to go in aviation, we want to help you find that, and help you find a mentor or something to guide you along that path.
Right. I remember, like, I was going to say, mention with the schooling, up until I started actually talking to pilots, I thought there was only one way, actually 2 ways. I thought there was only 2 ways to be a pilot. One was to go to a school that actually taught you how to be a pilot, which can be rather expensive.
It's ridiculously expensive. So that's why I always like to show that there's other ways to get there, because there's cheaper options than paying a bunch of money for those universities. I mean, they're good. They're expensive. Right.
Yeah. And nowadays, especially with a lot of pilots becoming more and more proficient and stuff, like becoming private pilots or instrument rated pilots, that's like one of the number one complaints I have. Is like, I am so broke, right now. Yeah. And I was wondering about that. Like, so it's like, how expensive is the license? And they say like, well, it's not the license. It's all the stuff that adds up to it, like building the hours, buying insurance, paying for the fuel. Like, oh, I totally didn't even factor any of that in. Wow.
And again, all this kind of leads right into what we're trying to do here too, because flying is not cheap, as much as I wish it was, or my wife wished it was cheaper. Well, I'm flying my own plane. It is expensive, and to get those hours, the easiest way to do that is knowing people in the aviation industry. And for people like myself, when I was younger, I didn't know anybody. So how do you build that time? I mean, even from an A&P standpoint, if you're trying to build time up for your A&P, you knew people that you can go work in their shop, or you can go hitch a ride with them to go get lunch or breakfast in an airplane. You could build time that way. That all adds up, and that cuts down the cost of learning or getting into aviation, for that matter, quite a bit. And so it allows aviation to be, out there to more of the masses than just people that can afford it. Because it brings the cost down a little bit, I think. So that's what we're trying to do here, is to try to create mentorships and help people.
That really struck a nerve with me when you mentioned, even with the A&P time, because that's a lot of people just like, oh, I'll just get my A&P certification and then work at some small time FBO or whatever. I'm like, that's if they'll take you, to be honest, right? Like even now with some of the people who listen to us, I'm like, hey, so how do I find an AMT job? I'm like, what kind of experience you got, friend? Like, because if you got zero, your best bet is probably to, I mean, as sad as it is, either find somebody who's down to take you, or just fork the money and go to a school. That's really, it's sad as it is. That's one of the most direct routes, because otherwise you're like you're just trying to build time. You're going to be spending a lot of money. And sometimes that money piece is a real gatekeeper for a lot of things. And
it really is for a lot of people. I mean, if you can't afford it, it kind of limits what you can and can't do. And so if we can get past that somehow, and then this is a great example, because with this project, with Marty on board too, is IA. We can have all the kids can log that time for their A&P. If they want to keep coming back to, keep adding more and more time to get towards their A&P, by all means, we have no problem helping reach that as well. It gives them an option.
So do you guys write letters of FAA letters of recommendation once they hit their hours for them?
That's a Marty question.
They can take to the testing center. So I asked that because I do that for some of the maintainers in the areas where I work. They've been working for a number of years and didn't have an A&P, but now they want to kind of progress themselves a little bit and broaden their horizons and kind of try to open more doors for themselves. And so we'll sit down and we'll put together all the work they've done, the hours and everything, and write a letter rec that they can then take to the certified FAA testing center. And then instead of having to do, an A&P score or whatever, they can test for their airframe power plant in general without the schooling.
That's a question for Marty. I'm not completely familiar how the letters of recommendation exactly work. I'm sure Marty probably does if he's still on there.
Yeah, what I recommend is that each student or person that's actually wanting to be an apprentice keep a logbook. They actually make an AMT logbook. You can get them at Aircraft Spruce to log your time. And then normally I'll sign off each page in the logbook, just like an instructor would. And then we count up the hours, and if they've reached their number of hours and days, basically work days, they get a letter of recommendation, and they take it to the local FSDO, and the FSDO writes them out a little chit that says that you can take the test. It's not that big of a deal. I actually with mine the first time through, I didn't do anything with it. Even though I was doing aircraft recovering, which started right off the bat in 1969. Did my first project with my mentor. It was a PA-12. I got to cover a wing pretty much by myself. We rib stitched together, but I did all the taping and all the spraying. And then tail surfaces did that, and he did the fuselage and the other wing. And that got me really in, how should I put this? I was a working student. In other words, he said, what I'm going to give you, I'm not going to charge you for, but you're going to work for it. I need 20 hours for every hour of flying time that I'm going to give you. And by the time I turned 16 to solo, I had over 100 hours of dual. And J3s, the PA-12, 172, Cessna 337, had some IFR time, some solid IFR time in there. It was quite a lot of time for a kid that 16 and soloing that I work for. And I tell guys, I have an apprenticeship program in my shop, where the guy comes in and works for me for basically 3 years and, gets built up his time and keeps a logbook. So he hits those different areas that, are required. And then, like I said, letter of authorization, send it in with him to the FSDO. I also have an intern program working with the colleges locally that have A&P programs. We have a local university, Andrews University in Berrien Springs, Michigan, that has a program. University of Western Michigan has an excellent A&P program, as does the University of, it's Community College of Lansing. They're a feeder for Delta. They have put out some extremely good students. Their interns, probably some of the best interns I've had, they are kind of bound because they do trimesters, so they only have 4 weeks in between each semester. I had a gentleman from Purdue who came to me for a summer, and at the end of the time we sat down and talked, and he said, Mr. King, he said, in the first 2 years of my time at Purdue, even taking the AMP courses, he says, I've learned more in your shop in the last 2.5 months than I did in the first 2 years at college. So, it's getting that hands-on. And if you can start early, that's the big thing is, my brother-in-law took me flying when I was 9. He was flying out at Tacoma Narrows Airport. I was out there visiting my sister, and he took me out over the Puget Sound in a 150, and I was big enough that I could reach the rudder pedals and push and pull on the controls. And he said, okay, the plane's yours. And I flew for about a half an hour. And after that, every Saturday, I was at the airport pretty much all day. I was an airport rat and washed airplanes for rides, you name it. And then Milt Hatfield, who was a local legend in this area, had a private strip and had just freshly rebuilt a J3, a 46. It used to belong to Bendix Corporation. They used for carburetor testing. And he had just pulled up to the pump, came over and just introduced himself and said, you must really like aviation. I see you out here all the time. And I said, well, I spend a lot of time out here. And I pointed over to a Musketeer that was sitting on the ramp. And I said, I've already bought, I've got 5 hours in that Musketeer out there. And so I'm learning how to fly. And he goes, oh, you're not learning how to fly. He said, you're learning how to drive. He said, if you want to learn how to fly and be an aviator, not only know how to fly them, but how to fix them, you ought to let me teach you in this. And for the next 6 years, from 12 to 18, I was out there every summer vacation, every day, every Saturday, every Sunday, anytime that I had any time at all. And then we do special things during the week, go to the local EAA chapter meetings. We had a number of people, if you've ever heard of Wayne Eisen, who designed the Minimax air ultralights and light sports. He actually was from Elkhart, and we used to go over to EA chapter meetings at his house. And at that young age, it just impressed on me that it didn't matter how old you were. It was, first of all, your size, and second of all, who you could get to mentor you. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the key, is finding that that individual or that group that is willing to mentor young adults into a program that the schools don't offer. They took out industrial arts in all the middle schools by year 2000. And so you have to wait until high school to get in any type of program. And then you normally are to a different location, like a career center, to do that 4 hours a day, which makes you kind of like a secondary citizen in high school, because you're not there all the time. And to me, that's not real conducive to learning, first of all, how to build, and second of all, how to fly.
Mm-hmm. I believe we've in our conversation we kind of answered this question already, but when it came time to create the Stay Indiana, or the STEM in Aviation Youth, how did that conversation start with you guys? Like,
it started back in, so what happened was, it was actually started in Oshkosh last year. There's another mentor, his name's Glenn. He sent me down in Oshkosh, and there was a teen build As much as I wish this was a unique idea from us, there's actually a couple of them out there. There's one in Florida called the Teen Factory, and then the Granbury High School in Texas is actually building a ranch like we would like to. So there's a couple of them out there. There's even one in Wisconsin. Well, I think the one in Wisconsin is the one that was in Oshkosh last year. But we sat down and like, there's nothing like this at all in our community. We got kind of a couple little aviation groups there. We thought maybe this would be a great way to unite all those kind of aviation groups and try to get our youth into, because a lot of the places now, if you look at a lot of aviation groups, that's older people, and they're a lot of retirees and stuff. It's not much of the younger generation. So we were wanting to try to get more of the younger generation in our area going. So we thought they can do it. Why can't we try it? So Glenn and I kind of came up with an idea to try to work on this. And then we have enough contacts in there. We just started going out to like people like Marty to ask if they'd like to be mentored or be part of this idea that we're trying to move forward with. And then so last December, we were fully incorporated in the state of Indiana. And then we just got our what's called a 501c3 just about a month ago. So we're a full nonprofit in the eyes of the IRS now. So we're a freshly minted, freshly new nonprofit. Just from the little bit of stuff we were able to put out in the community, there was a lot of interest in wanting to do this from the kids' standpoint. There's a lot of kids and parents that were wanting to get their kids involved with it. So I think it's one of those things. Like aviation, if you're not in aviation, it's kind of this exotic thing, off in the distance. It's like, yeah, it'd be cool to work on planes or fly them or whatnot. But like they don't know how to get into it. They don't know anybody in it. So like, how do I even get in there? But then if you throw something like this out there, it's like, hey, welcome forward. Come over here. We'll you can meet all the local mechanics and pilots and so forth. And create this community. Then when they actually do start working towards it, we have people that can help them move to whatever they want to do. They want to do corporate, or they want to work on planes in the airlines, or they want to work planes at local FBO, or whatever might be the case. We got people that can help them, find those dreams out for them.
You really spoke to me when you said they think of aviation as this exotic thing. MVP and I, as we recollected in all sorts of previous episodes, aviation didn't begin as a first choice thing. It was something like, it kind of came up as either as a commercial or as hey, did you know you could do this? I'm like, no. Wait, what is that? Right. And and then once you finally immerse yourself in wow, this is actually really fun. Like, I like this. And then everyone calls it the bug, right? Everyone gets bit by the bug. And whatever that bug manifests itself, whether it be a pilot, a mechanic, an engineer, and so forth, once you're there, okay, I can't stop. I got to stick with it. I love this too much.
Yeah, it's real addictive. But yeah, it's like myself, I didn't even know that was an option. Like when you are outside the bubble there, you don't even know it's even an option. Once you provide that as an option, you're like, wow, this is an option. And then, like you said, you start doing work in aviation, like, wow, it gets real addictive, like you said. And, that's all you want to do. You want to work on planes, fly planes, and just do everything airplanes, Right. And so that's what we're trying to do, is to provide that as an option for the local kids, just even allow them to know it's an option,
And then what makes me very happy to hear is that there's people who are extremely interested in wanting to do it. Like you mentioned, it's kind of sad to hear, but it's also fun to know that, yes, majority of the people who are currently in aviation are very senior individuals, mostly retirees, or people who are kind of they've lived I won't say lived the full life, but they lived enough to make a career out of something. And they woke up one day and just said, you know what? I want to change things up. Let's learn how to fly. And which is a good chunk of people, usually in their late 20s, mid 30s, who kind of discovered aviation late in their life and realized they loved it. But it's really awesome to hear that there's people below the age of 25 who
find it interesting.
Yeah, who find it extremely interesting. I mean, because for the most part, I think we've all grew up in the Top Gun era, where the only thing we saw aviation related was fighter jets or things screaming down in the air show. Okay, that looks fun. Or stunt biplanes where people stand on the wing and fly upside down and whatnot. Yeah. And for the most part, that was it. I was it's this mystical thing that only really, really cool people get to do. So hearing something like, hey, there's a after school program that you could totally do all this stuff Wait, really? That's a thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think a lot of people don't even realize. I don't know if we're planning to touch the base of this or not, but and there's a huge shortage of both mechanics and pilots right now, and
Yes.
it's gonna continue on. So it's like not only is it fun and addictive and amazing career, in my opinion, but it's gonna be growing, and there's going to be lots of jobs out there for them if you are certified for all this stuff. It's just there's so few of us out there to fill the gap. I saw something. It's they're supposed to be between with aircraft mechanics somewhere between 2027 or 2028. There's gonna be the gap is gonna be like over 40,000 aircraft technicians, meaning that the amount of growth that the airlines want to do and the amount of aircraft technicians being created, we're in the deficit by like 40,000 something technicians. So we're not going to be able to grow as much as we want, and the hinge point there is the technicians and the pilots. Just there's not enough of us to allow the airlines to grow as much as they would like.
Right.
So something's got to change. We got to get more of them somehow, or the airlines are going to have to dial stuff back, and which is the general public won't like that.
Right.
So there's a lot of opportunities out there. I don't think a lot of people realize the amount of opportunities that are out there until they get into it,
Right. And then to Marty's example is sometimes like you learn more by having that on-hand mentor to help kind of coach you through some things. Like myself, like I'm not very much a reading learner. Like I got to see things visually and how it works and whatnot. And visually, like through a video is cool, or seeing it like someone pointed on a chart is cool. But just having that hands-on and watching it work and putting your actual tools to the metal, it makes you learn so much faster. And again, to Marty's example, like one student, like he learned more in 6 months than he did in 2 years in the classroom, and that I think is one of the most crucial things, because MVP and I have said like troubleshooting is becoming a lost art because there's so much that you just can't simulate on paper, right?
It truly is. I mean, you find somebody who's good at troubleshooting, and man, like learn as much as you can from them while they're around, because that is a dying art. With especially as aircraft become all more electronic and everything, shoot, some of the new corporate jets and airlines, they can tell you what's wrong with them real time. They'll tell you what to fix and what box to change. But shooting wires and doing old school pressure checks and stuff, that's a lost art.
Right. And I don't know how the best way to word this, but a lot of students or AMT apprentices, if they spend majority of the time in a classroom, they have like this false sense of security in their knowledge, if that makes any sort of sense, gents, or anyone listening. Like they get very confident because they got the answer right in a test, but then you put them in a real life situation, like it kind of brain dumps. Like it doesn't connect. So and that sense of urgency is not there until they have their first missed flight for whatever reason. So having something where they're in the mix, building it, and then, oh, by the way, let's put you in the seat after it's finished, it really drives that point home. Like, hey, if you don't feel comfortable being in it, then then you should not feel comfortable signing it off, if that makes any sort of sense. I might have gone a little bit on a tangent on that, but I've been seeing that a lot with some of the newer or some of the more seasoned technicians, is like when they roll fresh out of a school or roll fresh out of a training program, they get a little bit too confident in their lack of skill, and they tend to kind of just see things from a horse blinder point of view, that, oh, I'm only focusing on this particular job and this particular job only. And they do it just good enough, if that makes any sort of sense. So they never have to have that urgency or have that security of having to put themselves in the seat. And then,
well, some people get that overconfidence, right? They get the license finally, and that's a big feat in and of itself. But I had an instructor in A&P school, and the day we got our licenses and all that, he sat us all down and said, "Hey, this doesn't mean you're an expert. All this means it's your license to work. There's still lots to be learned,
That's
So
the big learning part, right?
Right, yeah. So he's like, you learned enough to get this to let you go out into the field, but now is where the real learning begins.
Yeah, exactly. I'm still learning. I've been doing it for 54 years, and it's like I get a Cirrus in and have to set up deflection angles with templates, and it's totally different than what we used to do with just a protractor or a digital angle meter. And so I'm still learning. If you stop learning, you're pretty well on the dead side.
There's that quote for you, Mr. MVP again.
Yeah, there's my old soccer coach coming into play again.
Yeah, because I mean it's just one of those things that if you don't learn, and that's one of the things about right off the bat. When I was 14, I was taken to Oshkosh by a local Stitz distributor who was in charge of the booth at Oshkosh. This was 1970, so it was the first year there. And I was down there helping him set up the booth, and Ray Stitz walks in and greets Harold Kohler and looks over at me and says, "Hey, Harold, who's the kid?" Because Harold was up in his 60s. And he said, "Well, this is Marty King. He helped recover a PA-12 this past year, and he knows fabric very well." And Ray came over and introduced himself, and I did likewise. And he said, "So you've done some fabric work, huh?" And I said, "Yeah, I have." And he said, "Come with me." And he took me out to the display tent that they had arranged for them. And EAA had dropped off a bunch of host stabilizers, frames, and elevators, a couple ailerons, 2 or 3 wings, and for him to cover during the convention. And he said, "Do you think you could cover one of these for me? I've got a meeting up at headquarters for a couple hours, and I'll be back." He said, "Everything you need are in these boxes." And I looked at him. I said, "Sure, I'm sure I can cover one for you." And I picked I think it was a horizontal stab for a J3, and went ahead and got the fabric out and polytack, and went to work. I had it covered and pretty much ready for stitching by the time he got back. And he looked at it and he goes, "You think you could finish that with the tapes and stitching and everything?" And I said, "Not a problem." He says, "I've got another meeting with the flight safety people out on the flight line about an hour and a half, and I'll be back." So I went ahead and stitched it and put all the finishing tapes on, the final second coat of polybrush over the whole thing. And he came in and looked at it, and he goes, "I want you here at 8 a.m. every morning of the show, and I'll let you go at 2 o'clock, and I will buy you lunch, and I'll spell you for potty breaks." And so that started a relationship that lasted for 6-8 years, where I was one of the demonstrators in the Stitz tent, showing people here at age 14 how to cover. And having him come out and work alongside me and say, "Hey, I can show you how to do that corner better, or how you can pre-cover the aileron bay and fair everything in real nice with tapes." And it was one of those things to where I learned from the actual maker of the product, and that set me apart from everybody else. And the next, let's see, it was 2 years later when I was 16. Art Scholl, the aerobatic pilot that most everybody knew, was from California, flew a Chipmunk. he had a pyro canister blow up on his tail, and it burnt part of the fabric off of the rudder. And he was holding the rudder. He came in the tent, and Ray just happened to be there, and he walked over to Ray and said, "Hey, Ray, I've got to fly in tomorrow's air show. I don't know what I'm going to do. They can't help me. They can't get it done in time down at the emergency repair station." He said, "Do you have anybody that can do this?" And he just looked over at me and he said, "Give it to the kid." And we just happened to have white polytone, and if I remember right, it was Pontiac red, and there was a gold color in there. And we just happened to have all of those colors with him and in the display and in the tent. So I worked all night. I was up, and it just happened to be a nice 70, 80 degree year, very little rain, humidity was low. So I was able to do the brush, the spray, the polytone over the top, and put the stripes back on it. And by noon the next day, he came in, and that rudder was done. And he just shook his head. He goes, "I don't know how you did it." And he reached into his pants, pulled out his wallet, handed me $150. And I was making $1.25 minimum wage at that time, working in a music store to help supplant some of my interests in building and flying. And that was the start of King Aero. I actually started taking in wings, tails. Couple of them were projects, full fuselage and everything after that. So, as a kid, I had an excellent mentor, and he was one of those type of guys that he learned to fly and got his certificate in 1930. And I don't know how many airplanes he rebuilt before World War II. And then he was a military training instructor for down at Pine Bluff, Arkansas. So the back of my head, after flying with him in the Cub for quite a while, the back of my head has a patch that doesn't grow hair very often anymore, where he used to tap me on the head with his right hand and say, "Your other left foot." It was one of those things. But he was a demanding instructor. I had aerobatic time. By the time I soloed, I had 10 hours of dual instruction in a Cessna Aerobat, doing Cuban 8s and loops and rolls, spins. It's one of those things that I couldn't have afforded to pay for that by working, because just monetarily it didn't work out. But by donating my time and doing the 20 for 1, it worked out. I could do it. And, if you figure 100 hours at 20 hours to 1 hour of flying time, it kind of gives you an idea of how much time I actually spent out at his place. And he taught me how to weld. I welded, ended up in his old age. He designed an airplane called the, it was based on the Arup, that was designed here in South Bend. That's a big flying wing. It was designed back in the 30s. And he was actually one of the test pilots for Doc Snyder. And he designed an ultralight version of that. And it was featured in, I think it was the 1987 December issue of Sport Aviation. And I welded all the fuselages for him because by that time his hands had gotten fairly unsteady. He was in his 80s. And so I did all the fuselage parts and welded components for him. And he test flew. He actually had 3 different models, and had the last one was all fiberglass shell around a steel tube fuselage and had the molds for the fuselage. And unfortunately, nothing's been done with it. It was sold to a gentleman out in Kansas City by the name of Kevin Golden, and he hasn't continued on with any of the building of kits, because that's what he was trying to do. The plane flew excellent. I mean, you talk about an 18-foot wingspan and 11-foot cord, and try to land that, the cushion underneath the wings was just, it came down like a feather. And that's why they called them the Little Birds, was the actual name of the airplane. But it was one of those things that I couldn't have afforded as a kid to buy the education that man gave me. And that's what, when Matt asked me about helping out with this project, it was like, it's one of those things where if I can teach for the next 3 or 4 years anything to these kids, they're going to be so far advanced from everybody else that's going to wait until after high school to decide whether they want to go to college for aviation mechanics or whatever. I mean, these kids could actually get there and pretty much know what the first year at least is all going to be about and how to do it.
Right. And I think that brings things full circle, especially for the mentorship piece on both y'all's side, like with having an instructor who actually cares and gives you good gouge, to having a mentor who's willing to put the time in to kind of teach you some of the tips and tricks of how to do things and how to do it more efficiently. And that's one of the things that MVP and I have kind of missed out on, so to speak, in the early beginnings of our careers, because a lot of the stuff we did, it was kind of like trial by failure kind of a thing. Like you get it, you get it right until you're told it's wrong kind of thing. Right? And
I had the same issue as a pilot standpoint too, because growing up where I did, I had no one to tell me how to even do this. So like, even okay, I know I need a private license, I need the instrument. Then after commercial, like, what do I do now? You know, like, I guess I work towards my ATP, but like you said, it's you got to have 1,500 hours. But how do I get to that point? Like, no one tells me how do I bridge that gap? It's obviously not affordable for me to just keep throwing money at this to be able to pay for all that. So how do you do that?
Right. And again, like with the trial by failure, like you don't realize it until you've already made the mistake and like, okay, maybe the next 2 or 3 tries, if this happens again, I won't do this again. And then likewise with the pathways issue, right? I believe most would agree, like it's the pathways to get you to where you want to be. That's a big issue. It's not just people, not that we don't have enthusiastic people. It's we don't have enthusiastic people to take a pipeline to where they want to go. Like we have people who would love to be pilots. We have people who would love to be mechanics, engineers, and so forth. But how do we get there? And then by the time they figured it out, they've long since moved on. Like, well, I can't do this now. I'm already X amount of ways in this career, or I'm X amount of ways in debt, and so forth. So like the once had dream is more like a passing thought than it is as a goal. So I'm sorry if I'm stealing the words from you guys, but I feel like having such a program like this kind of initiative is how to for lack of a better word, like watering the plants before they have a chance to experience adversity, I should probably reword that. Like, we're giving a chance for you to grow and blossom before figuring out that, what sort of hiccups that you could have later. Like, I guess example is like, we're going to tell you how to get to it, and then we can help you kind of figure out how to achieve it, versus like, you're already past the point of you've already passed the decision point and you're just now learning all this happens. Example is like, say, like for how to get your A&P license a certain way. Like, well, I'm already past that point. The only way now is to just take a school or something like that. Or like you mentioned with the 1,500 hours, like that's a huge feat in itself. Like some people, you don't realize like how long of a time that is. And especially if you commit 100% to it, even if you did commit to 100% to it, you're still looking easy, like what, 3-5 years ish. If you just...
I mean, it depends on how much you can hitch rides with people, but yeah, I mean, it's a lot.
Yeah,
it's
it
a
really
lot of
comes
money
down to how much you can afford, right?
Yeah,
how much gas you can afford in the plane.
And again, that's not fair to people that just can't afford it necessarily either. So to help them find other options or other pathways to skip having to pay for all that stuff, because they can actually, get it other ways, or showing them other ways that they can make it affordable. I think is a big thing as well for the younger generation to move forward in aviation. I think some of the issues with the younger generation in aviation, they look at it and go, "Oh my goodness!" and they just see the numbers. It's like, it's how much to do all that. Like, it's ridiculous how expensive some of this can be. So they just are, don't even get into it from the get-go because they just see that. So if we can give them options to get around that barrier,
that's an excellent point, right? So you guys have young kids coming in, and you're kind of teaching them up, and if they can get a jump on everybody else, so by the time they actually go to the school or whatever else, maybe they're already certified, so they can start working. So while they're going to school, but they can also work and get some money and some more experience, and they're 2 to 4 years ahead of their counterparts, right? So I think that's a big part of it. And you said it earlier, getting exposed to it young, and the mind is so malleable and impressionable at that age. And so if there's a kid who comes in who's just interested in it, man, that's the time to really send home what the aviation, be it piloting or mechanicking, you can really send it home and sink it in and set that positive foundation in early. Because I didn't have that, right? I decided, I went to school off of a late night infomercial. I had graduated high school. I was doing apprenticeship at plumbing and electrical place, and my dad was hounding me, "Where are you going to school? Where are you going to school? All your friends have already decided what college you're going to go to." And at the time I was like, I don't know if I want to go to school or whatever. I kind of haven't figured that part out, and nobody was really guiding me, and it was one of those make a decision. And I just happened to be up late one night and saw an infomercial for an A&P school, and I said, "Well, I like planes." And I woke up the next morning, told my dad. He drove me over to the building, and I signed up. And that's how I got into aviation,
Wow.
What's great about a program like this, though, too, is and everybody's got their own thing, right? So, like, some people might be going in like, because they just saw Maverick, the new Top Gun movie. Like, this is amazing. I want to be a pilot. This is going to be great. I'm going to, fly around like crazy. And they get there and they realize, I'm not really into flying, because I've taken people up and they're like, this isn't what I was expecting. But they might get in there and go, well, maybe not the piloting part, but I really like building this stuff, or I like working with my hands on this stuff. And now they were able to test it out before, really diving into the college or whatever they might need to for this. They can kind of experiment which path they want, or if they want both, whatever. So they can kind of see which way they want to go.
Yep. And that was kind of me. I was like, I like engines. I like jet engines. Those are loud and go fast. Can make things go fast, Yeah,
we all like to go fast if you're in aviation, usually.
Yep. And so for the program itself, I know it's still developing, and you guys have plans to execute and have that rolling. How big of the first class, say, are you guys thinking of having?
So the big plan is I'm shooting for about 30 kids for the first class, and that'd be the first airplane. So the idea is it'll take about a year. Well, I'm talking to these other groups that have done it. It'll take about a year and a half probably to build this thing with 30 kids. You split those 30 kids up into two groups, so 15 apiece. Mostly because you can't have 30 kids looking over the one spot of the airplane. It's better to have smaller groups, and then inside those groups you can split them up even more. But split those groups up, the 15. So they might be like on Tuesday, another group would be Thursdays, and we do every other weekend with them. So that way they can still be kids and still have other afternoon commitments, but still have enough time to be able to do all this as well. After they get through with the one, get that plane built, those 30 kids, for every 10 hours that they put into it, they'll be able to get an hour of flight time. When that plane's built, they'll be kind of moving along with that section part of it, and we'll bring in 30 more kids, and we'll plan on trying to do a second plane. And then if we can get enough funding for the first 2 airplanes. This should be fairly perpetual because the idea from there then is once the second plane is done and that gets pushed out to being the flying airplane, you take the first airplane and you sell it to pay for the third airplane. And you should be able to sell it enough to be able to pay for the third airplane plus a little extra for the expenses and stuff moving forward. So then it should be able to be perpetual because whenever the plane's done flying, you sell it and pay for the next kit. Just keep on going from there.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Now, are you guys doing kits only, or are you going to find maybe a bird that's a little worn out and you have to ferry it home, and then there you bring it back to zero time?
There has been quite a bit of discussion with that sort of stuff. I wanted to start with the kits initially, and then from there, we have talked about branching out to doing finding a hanger queen and trying to get that up and running. So what the idea behind that would be, let's get a kid through the kits. They get done with the kits, and they come on, keep on building. I have no problem if we can get the funding stuff for it to find ourselves a hanger queen, bring that in, and let those guys come in more of like the advanced class or something, work on that hanger queen or barn find to actually, get up and flying while the next group starts the next kit. We've talked about that, and we are interested in doing something similar like that. But my problem with trying to start off with just barn find is we don't know what we'd be getting ourselves into. You get into that, and all of a sudden it turns into a money pit. We lose interest in the kids or something. So I want to make sure that those kids really want to learn about it. That's great. I'll be more than happy to show them that, but first spark their interest with these kits and then move them into something more advanced like that, maybe.
Yeah, I can attest to the money pit. So I worked for a place in West Virginia, and we worked private jets. That was our thing. We did AOG maintenance on corporate aircraft, traveled all around for those. But the owner found this old barn find in Bangor, Maine. And it had been sitting for years. Corrosion was pretty bad. They got a one-time ferry permit, brought it down to where our hangar was in West Virginia, and we had to gut that thing to the frame. I mean, all the way down to bare metal. Had to strip it, do a bunch of mods that hadn't been done since maybe the early 80s that were needed for that. It was a Piper Cherokee 6 is what it was. And so, we spent a lot of time and money and efforts, hours, getting that airframe up to snuff, and we put a glass cockpit in it as well.
Nice.
And it got to the point where I think the owner ran out of money and had to sell it for the current stage it was at. I think it had to be put on a truck and taken away because it wasn't still airworthy at the time. But yeah, we put a lot of time and effort into that. So that's where I was going with that on the old money pit situation.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of like lessons to learn pulling the stuff out like that and rebuilding it like that. Again, though, you have to worry about. We are a nonprofit. We're playing with other people's money, so we got to be a little conscious of that. I want to make sure that if we do get something it's something we can eventually succeed with. But with the kits, it's a little more controlled. We know that about time frames, about what we can do with that. We know our costs for the most part with that. There's always extras things we might not expect, but they're pretty well defined with the kits. But absolutely, I think a barn find would be a lot of fun for the kids after they've done a kit if they want to continue on with stuff like that.
I agree, especially like with still on the subject on barn finding, like it's one thing it's the same joy you kind of see when you restore something. Like, wow, this looks really beat up. This thing will never live again. And then however many years and hours you invested in, and you actually see it freshly painted, ready to roll off the line, and you see it like do its first loop or its first lap. Like, yeah, that was us. Like, you get that sense of pride in it, and you actually brought the beast back, kind of thing. Again, I totally understand what you're saying, especially with the kits, because at least it's more predictable, and for the most part, the materials have a defined condition versus like peeling back the onion and discovering the whole thing rotted to the core kind of thing.
Yeah. Or you peel back the onion. This isn't an onion, it's a hand grenade.
Oh, terrible. This is terrible. Upon building ours, is there going to be some coordination with like any local schools or local education programs where they get some classroom time too? Because
go ahead.
Because like I was saying, like I think some licenses or some certificates, they require X amount of classroom time to go with the hands-on. If I'm not mistaken.
There are a couple schools we're looking at talking to. I actually just talked to somebody from Elkhart schools, and then as well as Marty was talking to somebody from Marion School, saying they might be somebody interested as well. So there is an option there. I think it'd be good to tie it in if we can to like a classroom, like you mentioned, like it'd be a elective or technical part of it, or part of the career center or something. So they can send the classroom work as well. But that's an option. We haven't fully went after that quite yet because we're still trying just to get everything up and running. But it's something we like to do is work with some of the local schools.
Marion actually has a private pilot's course for their juniors and seniors. It's a 2-year course. And so they actually came over, went through the airport, came over to my shop. I also do restoration work. I've got a 1940 J4 Cub Coupe in the shop. And I've also just taken in a 46 J3 metal spar. And both are the J4 is undergoing a lot of restoration work. It was not in very good shape when it came in. The J3 was better, but somebody had found a wing out probably in a barn someplace that had a lot of corrosion in it, covered it over with primer and stuck it together and put fabric on it. And the guy's been flying it since the early 90s and didn't really know what was in it. And then we opened it up and it was like, oh my gosh, this is not good. Yeah, it's one of those things that he thought he had a great airplane, and the airplane was really he had gutter aluminum on the leading edge and just all kinds of stuff. It was not
that was that old onion hand grenade we just talked about.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, what is this? How is this even flying right now?
Yeah. So with doing the restoration work, I take in 2 projects a year, and I'm booked out until 2027 right now.
Wow. And a problem to have.
Yeah, and I'm trying to. I just got a call from Joliet Air Center. They have a albatross of all things up there that has a broken rudder spar from flopping in the wind all winter, and that rudder is 16 foot tall, and it's the size of a wing. And they want me to do a spar repair. And going back through the actual manuals, it's hard to know what to use because they're calling out for 301 tempered aluminum and then heat treated after bending. And the 301 hasn't been around for 50 years. And so to find a duplicate in today's materials that's satisfactory sometimes can be challenging. But the work never stops. And that's one thing about, I was telling Matt, is there are vertical markets, such as aircraft restoration, where people, sometimes will invest 2 or 3 times the amount of money that the aircraft is actually worth to have an airplane that they can fly for the next 30 or 40 years. That is not necessarily an Oshkosh winner, could be, but is totally safe and one that's going to last them with very few repairs. And that's the type of thing that I need to get through to the students is the use of tools.
Yes.
Now, like I said, we don't have industrial arts in the middle schools, and a lot of kids are kind of paired off to go the college route. So they take AP courses and they load their schedules down with courses at the high school, and so they don't even touch a screwdriver or a hammer. And I tell you, if you ask any of these kids nowadays how to wire a 3-way switch, and that's something that we had to do in electrical, because you had your choice of wood shop, metal shop. You could take plastics, you could take electric, you could take drafting. There was home ec, and you had to have 4 semesters made up out of all those choices. And I did the drafting thing, metal shop, wood shop, and electrical, and learned how to wire a 3-way switch, and right there, and how to change a electrical reset, wire a box. Those are things that kids have no idea. Even when they're grown, they have to hire an electrician to come out and take care of it.
Yep. The drafting one I definitely relate to, because I remember when they just removed drafting, and I remember the pains a lot of individuals who went through it or have been through it before just recollect. You guys are so, I don't know if it was lucky is the word, but they're saying like, you don't understand the pain that went into drafting, like having logbooks upon logbooks that's just meant for you to write a single letter X amount of times so you get it perfect and consistent every single time. I believe MVP, you had something similar to that when you did your writing, maybe not in the same sense as a drafting class, but probably like in your personal upbringing. But like it can get old really fast as far as like having to repeat something over and over and over and over. But
my mom used to make copies of my homework, and then at her job, and then when I did my homework, if the handwriting wasn't neat enough, she would shred it and make me start over.
Ooh.
So
you learn quick to write better.
Right. So like in that sense, right, having that hands-on, having the knowledge of the stuff that you're actually going to be putting the work on, that's huge. And especially nowadays when a lot of the stuff is simulated, where like they just show you a video, or it's kind of like a computer generated image, and it's you can interact with it, cool, but like when the action is just clicking a button or pressing a key, it doesn't give you the same effect as like actually pushing a real button, or having that kickback when something just doesn't want to do what you tell it to. And so like as far as the organization itself, I know this is it's in the beginning stage and it's very much in the planning. Is there any way, like say the general public can help contribute to the organization? Like is there any avenues for that?
Donation. Yeah, absolutely. We have a donation site there. Actually, if you go to our Linktree page, it's just the link te.ee, then /stay Indiana. Our Linktree site has on there a donation link. You can click on that to donate there. If you're in the local area, we're always looking for volunteers as well. So there's a volunteer sign up there as well, or people just wanting updates and stuff. But it's also a good place to get on with our social media as well. We have Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. And if I can figure out how to work TikTok, I found a younger guy to help me out with that. TikTok.
So that's actually what's going to be my next question, is the social media side of things. I mean, social media is everything, as much as maybe we don't want it to be, but also YouTube is a fantastic source, right? You were talking earlier about, kids don't have a chance to learn all these kind of stuff. Now, I was fortunate enough that I learned a lot of the hands-on and tools and stuff from my dad, grandfather, and all that. We grew up on a farm. We were always fixing stuff. But like my school couldn't afford those shop classes. And so even in my adult life now, being around the house, like, man, I've never done this before in here, but let me see what YouTube has. And there's tons of videos. Do you guys, have you guys considered like filming your own videos and how-tos and
Yep. So we actually have a computer guy-ish. It's a guy that does computer programming type stuff, but he actually likes airplanes. He's on part of our board. He wanted to do the reason he wanted the YouTube channel. It's kind of something what you're talking about there, was to actually film us doing the build and have like live streams and stuff of the build, and then also just doing filming of how to do this stuff too. So for the future, so like the first round might be a little rough, but then, in the future, so like the next class, looking back, you can go, oh, hey, this is what we're going to be working on, whatever, how to do pull rivets and stuff. for the rudder, how they would do that. And so we'd have, a video on that so they can go back to, if they wanted to, from the previous class is working on it, so they can kind of see it before they even, start doing it themselves. So that was an idea we're planning on doing.
And I know this isn't always the goal when we do these social medias and these videos, but enough traction behind them could be an additional source of revenue for your programs too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It gets your name out there for sure. Yeah, it's kind of social media is good and bad. The good part, like you said, it does get your name out there because it's a great way to be exposed to a lot of people, all at one time. It helps them find you. And so that
just
does
like
help
this conversation we're having now, right, through the social media and such.
Yep. Yeah, you guys found us through Instagram, so it worked out good with that. So it's a way to get that out there, and not to mention, it also helps spark the interest of the kids too. We put out a handful of them out there, and even the little few handful of Instagram and Facebook posts we've been able to do, it gets a lot of the kids' attention because they can see, just some fun, pictures of planes and flying and stuff. But it sparks their interest a little bit, and that's how a lot of the kids communicate, to be honest, nowadays. So we have to be able to communicate with them. So
factual.
Yep.
One thing I always liked when I was in school was so I was talking about engines earlier. I like the engine side of things. And we had this engine stand, and you would tear down this old, I think these are old Lycoming 540s.
Probably.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Yep. So we would tear down those, mic everything out. Everything was out of tolerance, but that's why those engines were donated to the school. But you can put them back together well enough, do all your practice write-ups in the engine logbook, and then we mount them on the engine run stand and take them outside, and run the guts out of them, which was fun. We did have an old radial engine stand, so I think radial engines are just the coolest thing.
Well, they sound cool.
Yeah, they sound awesome. And do you guys have something like that as well? That you're implementing? Just out of my own curiosity.
Just for the engine standpoint, being able to work on beat up engine. Is that what you're talking about, or?
Yeah, or just an engine. Put it on there. Run it through its paces.
Yeah, we don't have anything like that as of yet. Again, I think there's a lot of possibilities with this, and they can branch out quite a bit to different things. Mm-hmm. But it all depends on funding, of course. But if we can get donations and stuff like that, we are more than happy. It's going to be it's a teaching area. We're mentoring, after school thing. So anything that we can bring in to help teach or mentor them better, or show the teens more things is, amazing. It would be super helpful. But so yeah, it's definitely a possibility. We haven't talked about that specific, but it's definitely an option.
So as far as people in the area, how they go about finding you guys, is there
so we've been going to, we just actually had an Elkhart Air Show. So we were at the Elkhart Air Show. Then, believe it or not, this weekend we have a Young Eagles flight. I'm actually flying on the Young Eagles, but we'll have a little booth there too. And then South Bend Aviation Day will be there. So we're going to all the aviation events in the local area, but as well, we're going to be we're trying to get into the schools if we can to help get people that way as well. And then also we're trying to work out ourselves into the community, being visible in the local events. And then we do have a website as well. I should probably mention that, which is stayindiana.org. That's a work in progress still, but the main page is up. So like I said, be patient. We are new, so we're trying to get through those paces of getting through all the organization part of it.
Just we definitely could feel the pains of having to start something from scratch, but the fact is that you guys are doing it, and that's probably the biggest step of it all is I'm not talking down on a lot of people, but a lot of people say something, but not a whole lot do it, if that makes any sort of sense. So they
just need that spark to get it going, because everybody's thinks it's a good idea, but you got to actually, take that first step forward, start moving forward with it, and just keep moving forward, because there's about 1,000 hurdles to get through, as you're probably well aware when you try to start something new.
Right.
It's trying to get over each one of those hurdles one after another. It's like you can look at all of them and be overwhelmed and just give up, or you can just kind of approach the first one, deal with it and get over that one, and go to the next one, keep moving forward. That's kind of what we're doing. We're in the process right now.
Right. And then that success is cumulative too, right? So like once you pass, like, all right, I feel freaking good. This was a big hurdle. We got through it. So let's bring on the next one. And then another one goes down. Another one goes down. Like, we're trucking along. Hey, we're moving on up. And then, next thing you know, like, and I think this is going to be the same feel for the students, is like, oh, this looks like an impossible thing. And then as things progress and as things accumulate and or come together, like, oh wow, that wasn't so bad at all. Like, wow, we actually got pretty far. It's starting to look pretty good, right? And then you kind of start getting a sense of pride in the end result, right? And then once something does push through, that you look back at it like, wow, I can't believe we made this into such a headache than what it really was. And then and then in the end result, at least for what we're all here trying to do, is trying to give someone that opportunity and then afford them the pipeline to make things happen, right? And not just give you a way in, but also like enable you into a way where like you're in a sense ahead of the game, or you've already been told some of the hurdles, so you're preparing for it more than just going into it cold and figuring it out for yourself as it happens. So
absolutely, we're trying to set them up for success, not set them up just like, oh hey, this is it, and then good luck. It's set you up, and then like, here's the pathway. Here we're here to help you to move into that pathway and set you up for success, so that way you do stay in the career field, if possible.
Right, or at least like you're best enabled to, right? Versus like how all of us have started. Like it was like either right place, right time, or the wrong person showed me, and it took a little bit to figure out that you were past bad gouge, and then finally chasing your goal like well after sometime later. I'm like, well, if instead of playing that what if question, like, well, if this had happened, then I would have XYZ from that point.
Yeah, and there's a lot of bad advice out there. So it's nice to have a group of people, so at least there's some good advice amongst the group of people, so we can help weed out some of that bad advice, because there's so much bad advice that gets passed on to anybody in aviation. And it'd be nice to and it's disheartening to watch, because they get some bad advice away, and they just kind of like, well, I guess that's the one person I really know. I just kind of give up and move on to do something else. Right. And that's what they really wanted to do. So it's helpful to have somebody there, to help step in, like, maybe look at it this way or something, or take a different path. But it's still an option for you to continue on.
And then having like individuals like yourself and Marty, especially like with Marty's experience, having over 50 plus years, like you're learning from one of the ones who have pretty much seen the evolution from like the days of cloth. Now it's all like electronic, like see-through hologram skin and stuff like that, and seeing that whole evolution happen and watch it all play out, and you're kind of getting a piece of history, really. Like these individuals have seen the evolution from a turning point, and now you're catching it from all this, versus just kind of learning from ground, or from point zero, from whatever that turnaround point was. And just kind of understanding that this is all you know. Like if all you know is digital and just having the airplane tell you what's wrong, versus like having to sit there and fine tune yourself and attune with the aircraft, or attune with what the issue is, and figuring it out from there. It's such a huge experience difference, and being able to have that afforded to them is, for lack of better words, monumental. So I appreciate you, gentlemen, with the efforts you're trying to do. And especially like you mentioned before earlier, like sooner or later, we're going to have a gap in professional experience, and it's better to kind of build that up now, give that interest now, versus like when that shortage happens, to all of a sudden just lower the bar. And like, if you have a pulse and can breathe air, then come on through,
Yeah, we don't want that though either. Because that's when you start having accidents and incidents happening. So it's better to have them well experienced, like you said.
Yes. And Mr. MVP, do you have anything else you'd like to ask?
It was just nice that you mentioned, you see a lot of people get bad advice or guidance in this field. And it's nice to see that there's a few of us out there now making strides to change that narrative and to try to put people on the right path. Because I can tell you, I think we've all experienced it probably at some point in our career so far, as we've all been given bad guidance, and at one point we went, is this really all there is to offer from this? And then there's that one thing that brings you back and you're like, nope, I do like this. That's why I got into it. But it's nice to see there's a group of people slowly but surely changing the narrative and pushing out those positives about the industry. So thank you guys for that.
Well, thanks for having us on too. We appreciate it. It helps get our name out and stuff as well. So,
well, once again, gentlemen, we can find you on the Facebook and Instagram at Stay Aviation, and the website itself was stayindiana.org. Is that correct?
Yep, it's stayindiana.org is the website.
Awesome.
And then we have a link tree as well, which is /Stay Indiana.
Sounds good. Gentlemen, you have any final words for all the masses listening out there?
If you're interested in aviation, definitely pursue it, and don't listen to all the naysayers.
Absolutely.
No, and if you're a young kid, don't shy away from coming out to the airport and talking to your local mechanics, because in GA aviation, I've met very few mechanics that won't talk to a young person about what programs are available, or how to get into aviation, how to do mechanics work, how to learn how to do it, and direct them to a program like the stayindiana.org is an excellent one. 88 Charles is the one that's up in Wisconsin. They're on their 5th airplane. They've had over 15,000 hours that have been contributed by their students since 2012. The program's been in place. So they're doing a fantastic job up there. We hope to do equally as well. We've got plenty of young. I talked to a Boy Scout troop at the air show, and all the kids were between 12 and 17, and were interested in aviation, not just to get a badge, but they wanted to know more about, how do I learn how to fly? How do I learn how to be a mechanic? And that's the type of interest that we're generating, and it's something that's sorely needed in our industry.
Most definitely. And let us know, you out there, what you guys think. Like, is there any programs out there that's similar to what Stay Indiana is doing? Let us know in the comments. Shout it out. We can pass that along too, because maybe you're not in Indiana or in somewhere that seems too remote to have something aviation. Maybe there is, and that's more information passed forward, and I can help you find that spark and ignite it and kindle it, and just keep that fire going. So and you can pass down and have similar experiences to like what Stay Indiana is doing. Let us know in the comments, in our social medias, and our email, our website, whichever is the easiest way for you to get a hold of us and Stay Indiana to pass this information along. Or if you want to participate in one yourself or learn how they're doing it, so you can make one for the area you're in. The dreams are endless. The possibilities are endless. All it really takes is that one single spark and maybe even that one mentor to help push that along to help you find what you're looking for. On that note, gentlemen, thank you once again for joining us on the show. And everyone, thank you all for listening. And we'll catch you on the next one. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you for having us.
We would like to take this time to thank our patrons for supporting our show and allowing us to make episodes, maintain our gear, and create merch for all of our listeners. With special thanks to Erica Lamont, Chris Hawkins, Eric Shaw, Dan Schubert, Ryan Frushauer, Kyle Keir, Mike Sherwood, Caleb Stockhill, and Jennifer Brofer. Thank you all so much for your support and patronage. If you like our show, please support us on Patreon. You'll receive awesome perks like access to our private Discord, discounts and early access to our merch, first glimpse of our comics and other projects, and so much more. You can further support us and show off your prowess as an aircraft specialist by visiting our shop at cancelformaintenance.com. If you like classy or rugged watches, visit our affiliate, Rockwell Time, at rockwelltime.com. Use the code CX, the number 4MX, to save 10% off your total order. If you have suggestions for the show or you'd like to be a guest on the show, send us a line on our Contact Us section at cancelformaintenance.com, and we'll do what we can to get both your ideas and yourself on the show. Please support us on social media, like Facebook at Cancel for Maintenance, Instagram at CANX for Maintenance Podcast, or Twitter at CXMX Podcast. Please check out our new comic series on the Tapas app. Like, share, subscribe, and comment on our comics. Let us know what you think. Thank you all so much for your support and listenership, and we will catch you all next time.